Welcome back. Glad that you have chosen to give us a little bit of time. This is Friday, October 27th. Last weekend in October already. It's gone just amazing. Steve Autrey, pastor at Denver United Methodist Church, my amazingly good friend here, Paul Thompson at Huntersville United Methodist Church.
You just like me because you borrowed my truck.
It's all you got. and then you hold it over my head. I'm like, somebody's got to drive that truck.
Yeah, but I'm glad you get to use it.
I'm glad I get to use it too. Can I borrow your truck?
Yeah, you can borrow it.
Okay, all right. So yesterday, Paul was kind enough to give me some time to talk about what's going on at Denver. And we've pastored churches for many years now, and each church has its own identity. Even though we've always pastored United Methodist churches, we can tell you very clearly that not all United Methodist churches are exactly the same.
They are not.
They all have different culture, they all have different identity, and they all do things slightly in their own fashion that are at variance from others. So, Paul, what is unique about Huntersville as part of the United Methodist connection, and what's happening here?
Well, I think one of the fascinating things when you think about Huntersville United Methodist Church is to think about its 100-plus year history. Probably started with some Sunday school classes in the early 1900s, and from that, a church emerged. And through the years, this church has been through some incredible ups and downs. We've talked about it a few times in church. Twice, representatives from the Methodist Church came to the leadership at Huntersville United Methodist Church and said, we're going to shut you down. You're not going to make it. The handwriting was on the wall. The church is just not going to survive. And twice in the church's history, the leadership of Huntersville said, oh, yes, we are. Just watch us. So embedded in this rich history of this church is this determination, this dogged determination that we will be a Methodist presence in Huntersville, and that Methodist presence is still strong to this day. When we start to think about Huntersville United Methodist Church, we have this vision that emerged from some work we did prior to COVID through what was then called Nehemiah Project. It's now called Transformation Journey. And we were trying to think about a visual, a description of what would a church look like, what would a community look like if we could aspire. We didn't want to use numbers, we didn't want to use attendance numbers, we wanted to use how would we know it. And the four words we came up with were passionate, thriving, loving, and community. Passion is one of those things that I admire. I admire when someone believes so strongly that it really draws forth their energy. It makes them excited about what they're doing. We want not only the church to be passionate, but we want the whole community to sense the passion of Huntersville. Our deep, dogged belief that God is present in our lives and that the grace of Jesus Christ is transforming. Passion is one of those words that describes that commitment to that. But after passionate is thriving. If something is thriving, it may be growing deep instead of growing on the surface. And I hope that's where we are at this point. I hope we are growing deeper roots. But thriving means that it has energy, it has growth, it has nutrients, it has all of the things necessary for it to grow and thrive. So thriving is our second word. Loving is the third word. If you walk into Huntersville United Methodist Church, if someone visits our church and you say, well, tell us what you experienced on your first day, almost inevitably, Steve, the first words out of their mouth, I felt welcomed. I felt a love within this congregation. I think that's always been a big part of the life of Huntersville, this deep sense of, man, I felt welcomed, I felt loved, and I felt the warmth of the community. The last word in that, passionate, thriving, loving community, is this idea that we do not exist for ourselves. Just like you said yesterday, if you were to eliminate Huntersville United Methodist Church today, it suddenly didn't exist anymore, this community would notice. There would be a real hole in the fabric of this community. because of the people who get fed, the people who get nurtured, the children who get educated. It is across the board. Huntersville United Methodist Church is a place where people come from without the community into the church, and the church goes out into the community and blesses. So passionate, thriving, loving community is our vision. And we talk about our mission statement. God calls us to open the door, make room at the table, and create spaces so that we foster lasting relationships with Jesus Christ. I think what that means for me, Steve, is that this building that we're in, and we're actually in Huntersville United Methodist Church, was built for ministry. With restrooms, with showers in the restrooms, with open spaces, with food pantries and preschools. This church literally was built for ministry. And that's a wonderful asset to have. This physical building beckons to the community, hey, come and take part in the life of this church.
And you talked about the facility, and it's so important to remember that churches are rather our facilities are launching points for ministry. They're not the end all of the ministry.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I think we probably, as we go forward, will recognize. The big decisions that we have going forward are, what are we going to do with the other 18 acres? There's 28 acres on this campus. We've developed basically 10 in the building. And so we've got 18 acres that we are in a real lengthy conversation about what can we do. And I'm hoping that God will lead us to that place to where we can continue to make connections into the community through the use of the 18 acres we have.
And so that's part of the future, part of the work towards the future.
Yeah, I really do think that conversation around those 18 acres is really going to be a big part of how we go forward. It is dominating our thinking right now, is dominating what do we do so that we show that we are both faithful. Certainly there is a financial ramification to this. I think it's clear that churches no longer survive just on the tithes and offerings of the people who attend the church. You're always looking for different ways to create revenue and at the same time create connection. That's what we hope emerges, is that new partners in ministry, new ways to be in relationship with this community. All of that emerges from the conversation we're having about the land use.
Well, and it gets back to this, I think, deeper theological understanding of why you support ministries. It's because we're called to do it. We're told to do it, for one thing. It's a biblical thing, but there's a theological understanding that all we have comes from God. It's not really ours. We steward it. We care for it. We are blessed by it. But part of the stewardship is to release that back to God also, to give back to God so that others can be blessed. And when we do that, we see energy, we see vitality, because it does take resources it takes a lot of resources to run a facility. It takes a lot of resources to have excellent worship and to have people to lead ministries in certain places that you really can't just hand over to a volunteer. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know that's more and more that can be a model, but there's something about when people come together, they give what they have and hand it over to God. God takes it and does something incredible with it to make the world a better place. I know that's a kind of a grandiose statement, but that's what God indeed does.
So we were talking about the upcoming General Conference, May of 2024, how it may impact Huntersville United Methodist Church. We've already had people who say that they perceive that the United Methodist Church is changing, did not want to stay, and we've lost folks in that conversation already. But my encouragement to you is that the United Methodist Church, as exemplified in Huntersville, will continue to be the same welcoming, hospitable, the same open space to everyone believing that if we ever start deciding who's welcome and who's not, we are no longer a church. Then we've become a club. And that's not who God has called us to be. We're not a club, we're a church that, when Jesus says he welcomes sinners and eats with them. Well, we're all sinners, and Jesus Christ is always inviting us to be a part of the table. And so I truly trust and believe that the future of Huntersville United Methodist Church is always going to be caught up in that idea that we have the one Lord Jesus Christ, one baptism, one faith, and there is a sense in which we're all deeply connected to one another through our baptism, deeply connected to one another through the sacrament of Holy Communion, deeply connected in the service to Jesus in the world. And as long as we focus on those things, the future of Huntersville United Methodist Church is going to be especially bright. So I hope that you'll, if you ever decide to visit, or if you're a regular attender, make sure that nobody ever comes into this place and walks out and says, "Gosh, nobody spoke to me." That'd be the worst possible thing.
Yeah, and on behalf of your church, be deployed back out into your community, into your workplace, your school, wherever you may be, as a representative of Christ and an ambassador of your church, because that's how churches stay vital, become vital, is when the congregation gets excited about doing the work of Christ. So thank you for being with us.
And thank you for the privilege for me to be the pastor of Huntersville. I know Steve feels the same about Denver. What a privilege and honor it is for us to be associated with these two great places.
Thank you.